All right, should we go or should we wait a few minutes for folks?
Well, it looks like people are still entering. It's up to you whether you want to start. I will give you a warning at 1:50 that you have 10 minutes left. So you might, depending on how long your presentation is, you might want to start in.
I think we've got time. Let's maybe give it just a second. I think we're up to, I see people trickling in.
Okay.
I see Sonia out there. Glad you could make it.
Sonia.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start then. Thank you, everybody. Hope the conference is going well. A little bit different, obviously, with it being in a virtual setup and configuration, but hopefully it's still productive and entertaining for everyone. So I'm Matt Russell with the LocalHop team, and we'll walk through the folks that will be co-presenting with me. But want to give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover and then dig into the meat of the presentation. So just as far as an agenda goes, who we are, a bit of the project and how we got started with this. And then specifically, and this will be the meat of what we go through today, is what we did with Bad Axe, the Bad Axe library and Mimi's team. Just a couple points on LocalHop and then questions. But I know I've got questions listed in the agenda at the end, but if you have questions as we go along, feel free to speak up, ask us. Between myself and Courtney and Mimi, we'll be sharing the presentation duties, and we'll try to field any questions that you may have. So we do want to make this from a style or presentation perspective. We're going to start with a little bit of an overview in the context, but when we get to the Bad Axe example, what we're going to do is more of like a panel or a virtual panel between us and Mimi, and try to make this a bit interactive for you. So as far as who we are, Matt Russell, co-founder of LocalHop, and I've got with me, and she's controlling the slides, Courtney Till, and then we also have Mimi Harrington from the Bad Axe library.
I'm recording Matt's
thank you.
presentation right now. What's up?
All right, so a little bit of background, and Sonia, you can actually feel free to jump in if you'd like on this slide. But we wanted to set the context with how this got started. And so the state of Michigan is using the Cloud content management system for a lot of the websites for the small and rural libraries. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. The goal was, at least when we got started with this and talking about it, was to ensure the libraries are really an integral part of the local community, and wanted to see if there was ways that we could work to enhance that. And so the approach that was discussed was not just providing the calendar of the library events, but trying to embrace and build on a community calendar for those small and rural libraries that are part of the Cloud program. So that was kind of the genesis of this, and you can see a sample of one of the calendars out to the right. We'll dig into that in a little bit more detail as we go along. So go ahead, Courtney, to the next one. So real quick, just what is LocalHop, and we'll touch on this a little bit more. We're an events management software company based in Michigan, here in Pontiac, Michigan. Our focus has really been around trying to drive community engagement for organizations. We really built out a central hub for activities that could be supported really at libraries, but we've had an eye on trying to do this for the community on the whole. And so some of the approach and the mindset that we bring is to really bring that community together, and the libraries are a core and integral part of that. So that's how we got approached and got brought into this. So next one. So the Library of Michigan, Sonia approached us, and we wanted to do a pilot with this. And so we did last year. We opened it up to the Cloud site users, and we had 19 libraries in the pilot year. And I'm happy to say that we've been renewed and expanded. This year we've got 28. And Sonia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think there's a few spots open for this year. So if you have questions on that or would like more info, Courtney or Sonia could help you with that afterwards. All right, so community calendar. What is a community calendar? Wanted to start with this a little bit. So I think everybody's likely familiar with what a calendar is for your website and a lot of the events, but what we're trying to do is bring the community together. And so this is an example of one of the community calendars, and you can see it's a little bit of an eye chart perhaps in the presentation, but out to the right, we've got a drop down for organizations, and it's exploded for the example here. But you can see all the different organizations that Mimi and her team reached out to. And what we do is each of them load that data and it aggregates into one view. You can then filter by organization, by date, by month, however you'd like to do it, like a typical calendar, but it brings all those events together into one place. And so it's for your residents or your patrons, it's really meant as a way to get just a one-stop shop for all the activities going on in that community. So additional details to it, you can blow it up. You can go in to mouse over the events, you can see the details, and then you can pull up the full-blown details for the event. If there's registration or social media or anything you want to tie into it, you can do that as well. Key thing is that the calendar actually sits on your library website. It's not a punch out, you don't go to another site. It's all embedded, and this functionality all happens magically within your website. So we worked with Enfold Systems, which is the vendor supporting the cloud system, and we tried to make a tight integration of our calendar functionality with their cloud system in order to support this fully. Go ahead to the next one. So with this, I'm actually going to turn it over to Mimi and Courtney. This will be the bulk of what we go through. We've got a lot of questions that really try to walk through the experience, kind of the thought process that Mimi and her team had. I found it really interesting to see how they tried to position this and try to go forward with it in Bad Axe. And so I'm hoping, and we're hoping this is of interest to you, and maybe there's some lessons learned that you can pick up for your community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Courtney and Mimi. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so as Matt said, we're kind of going to go Q&A style here. So a few questions for Mimi, going to get her answers, and hopefully some of it you can relate to or be inspired for how you would conduct your own community calendar at your library. So Mimi, first question, kind of just how was your library engaging with the community prior to the LocalHop community calendar?
Well, we were using, and we still use, pretty much traditional means that I think most libraries tend to use. Use local newspaper and radio station advertising. Try to use social media quite a bit, Facebook and Instagram for our library. Sending notes to the kids at school when we had different children's programming. We have a constant contact email list and a remind list that we send text to. And that tells people what's going on at the library. So it's really targeted at letting people know what we're doing. It doesn't really, talk about other things that are going on in the community.
Right. So with that, I mean, what was more appealing about joining the pilot program and getting a community calendar on your website?
I mean, the community calendar was a total answer to our wishes, because a few years ago, we participated in a community engagement initiative that the Library of Michigan had headed up. And we had a lot of small group conversations with community residents about what their aspirations for the community were. And a very strong theme that kept coming up had to do with people's desire to have one central place that they could go to find out what was happening in the community. Events might be broadcast on the radio, or there might be something in the newspaper, but without at every meeting we had, people would say, well, I don't get the newspaper anymore, or I don't go on Facebook, so I'm not going to see the things that are advertised. And people were just really frustrated about communication of information and being able to find out what was happening in and around town. So then when the community calendar opportunity came up, it was just a perfect answer to the concerns that community residents have. And so we jumped on it immediately.
Well, I'm glad you did. So did you have a calendar on your website before the pilot program?
We did have a calendar because I'm pretty sure Plowed supplied a calendar, but of course it only had the events that were going on at the library. And in the next slide that I think that you just showed a minute ago, this did a great visual, of the appearance of the calendar. If it's just library events, such as you see on the left, especially now during COVID, where we have almost, very little to offer because of the virus, as opposed to on the right, I think that's an example of our community calendar. And although a number of things may show canceled, you get an idea of how full the calendar can look when all the different events in the community are put in one place. It's a pretty powerful visual.
So with that, how did you determine kind of which organizations to include, and how did you introduce this idea to those organizations?
We wanted our calendar to be as inclusive as possible and cover as many community events as possible. So we started by trying to think of as many types of organizations in the community that we could to cover all possible events that people in the community might be interested in attending. So we started with an Excel spreadsheet that you see on the left, and we kept track of, if you can flip back to the prior slide. We were keeping track of contact information, phone numbers, emails, website addresses, Facebook addresses, that kind of thing. And then we were able to track whether we had signed them up yet. And then we developed the icon that you see on the right. We used a very nice photo of the Bad Axe Water Tower, and then we added the community calendar to be our icon because we thought it was colorful and catchy. And then if you go to slide 15, see sort of the different types of organizations that we thought would be appropriate to include. So we just tried to be as broad as we could, from the schools, the local intermediate school district, obviously the city, any youth sports leagues, entertainment venues like our bowling alley and theater, fitness and yoga and dance studios, historical societies, military groups. We've got a lot of social agencies in town that have various initiatives and events. Huron Behavioral Health, the Health Department, Great Start Collaborative. We thought of the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, agricultural groups, including the county fair because we're the county seat, 4-H, the MSU Extension and Farm Bureau, various civics groups like the Lions and Rotary, our local hospital, bars and restaurants, some of which are quite active with fun events, especially on weekends, and various self-help groups and hobby groups. We just tried to think of everybody we could.
And was there any organizations that you had to exclude from the calendar?
Well, one question that came up had to do with commercial or retail organizations. We really weren't quite sure what to do about them. But given that our focus was on promoting events and things to do in town, we decided not to contact retail stores to ask them to join the calendar. But we did have one store that contacted us. And the representative of that store was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and she was very enthusiastic about the calendar as I was describing it to the Chamber. And she asked if their store could join the calendar. She didn't put up that very many sales events, so it wasn't overwhelming, and it worked out fine. But whether or not to include, who to include and who to exclude is a decision that I think each library has to make, for itself. But you really should have a written policy about the scope of the calendar and who's going to be included, so that you've got a written set of rules just in case a situation does arise. But overall, we have not had any problems with the content that people have wanted to put up on the calendar.
Well, that's good. Did you have any issues when you were reaching out to organizations to join the calendar? People were
very enthusiastic and very receptive to the idea of the calendar. So that it was a very good experience. Those that may have expressed a little bit of hesitation really did so because of their concern about the technology. And to address that issue, we just offered to post events for that organization so that they wouldn't have to learn how to put things up on the calendar or create events. And that's worked out really well. we had maybe a couple organizations that we had trouble reaching just because they wouldn't return our phone calls. And so we just went to plan B and tried to find somebody else in the organization that was willing to work with us on getting their events posted.
Well, that's cool. And why did you decide to take this approach when building out your community calendar?
Well, given our experience with the community conversations, we thought if we could make the calendar a success, it would really address concerns people had in the community, and it would be a great solution. So we figured it was worth the time and the effort to try and include as many organizations as possible. It was a fair amount of work up front. It was quite time consuming because we decided the most effective way to get the ball rolling was to make phone contacts with people, rather than say an email or sign up some kind of a group post. So we called each and every organization, but the end result was that I ended up sort of, quote unquote, meeting a lot of people in town that I may have known of them, but I had never spoken with them. And sometimes they'd even ask me library questions because they figured, why not? I've got her on the phone. And so I was able to, promote a few library issues. But I now know a lot more people in the community that I can contact for help with sponsoring library programs or trying to come up with a joint effort. It really was a great way to build and just further cement already established networks and relationships that we had in town. So to me, it's a great outreach tool for the library.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it. And usually when you think of the community calendar, you're not thinking about how it is inclusive of a relationship with those organizations, but more so your website and growing traffic for all the organizations from the patron side, right? So yeah, exactly. That's cool.
And community engagement is such an issue these days, as it should be. You can just get so many different things accomplished through the community calendar.
Yeah. So how did you publicize your community calendar?
We used every means we could think of. We did press releases to the newspapers. And I would say I was a little disappointed in our experience. And so it might behoove other libraries to really try and have an active hand in how the information is disseminated to the public. Both articles in the two papers we had they weren't front page, and I was really hoping they would be front page just to attract people's attention. But learn your lesson. But we contacted the newspapers and the radio, and we used all the different social media and constant contact and remind tools that we had. And after our coordinated launch, so we launched the very first of the year, and then we every week or so we would put up on Facebook and Instagram. I think it's the next two slides, Courtney, sort of lighthearted reminders. So if you can go to the next slide, I think it shows.
Hey, Mimi. This is Matt jumping in.
Sure.
I had a couple quick questions come in just from the questions on the last slide before we jump down to this real quick. So one that came in was, what size was the team who reached out to the list, and about how long did it take?
Oh, great question. The team was 2 people, myself and another staff member. We divided up the list, and I would say I was devoting several hours a day to the effort, among other duties. And it took us a good part of November to contact just about 90 or so organizations. It felt like a lot of work at the time, at that time, but it was really a more of a front end effort.
And then another question that came in: how many organizations were on board at the start versus joined after this effort was initiated?
I'm finding that a little difficult to answer, only because we had our intensive effort, and at the end of that, say around the beginning of the year, right in early January, we were probably up to about 70 organizations, and we had our Excel spreadsheet still had a lot of empty spaces that then after we launched the calendar, we kept going back to people that we hadn't gotten in touch with. And by the time I visited City Council to let them know about the calendar, I think we were up to 90 plus organizations. So
Got it. Thank you.
Front end effort.
Thank you. So I hope that answers the question. So I think we were back on the, how did you publicize it? So Courtney, you guys were going to the next slide. Sorry for jumping in.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. So these are the sort of lighthearted reminders we put up on social media. You know, weather got you down, looking for something for the kids to do. And if you notice at the bottom of the slides, it says www.baevents.org is where you need to go, or to get the LocalHop app. We decided it was worth the money to get a separate domain name because, you know, badaxlibrary.org/community calendar, you know, that'd be too much for people to remember. So we were hoping that baevents.org would be real easy to remember. And I was glad to see when I checked it out on Google, baevents.com is at the top of the Google list, but about 5 or 6 names down, baevents.org, and the community calendar shows up. So that was you know, heartening to know. So we just tried to do a blitz publicity campaign, and then with regard to the participants, every month, well, for the first 3 months before COVID hit, we were sending out monthly reminders to say, don't forget, if you have an event coming up, please post it on the calendar or send us the information and we'll post it for you. And by the way, of that 90 plus organizations, we are probably posting for about 25% of them. You know, small groups that don't have that many events going on during the year, and maybe groups that are a little hesitant about the technology. But one of the people on our staff is devoted to social media, and so she's able to get all the events posted. And then we also encourage the participants to put that community calendar icon on their website with the link over to the calendar.
That's cool. I didn't realize you guys had your baevents.org was on the first page of Google. That's exciting.
Yeah, but that worked out.
So with that, was a community calendar difficult to add to your website?
No, the calendar we got the calendar up with very little trouble. We did, and from our perspective, we wanted to have a separate library calendar from the community calendar, and that worked out fine too. One thing we had an issue with that I would just sort of like to share so others know, we had some initial issues understanding how to get events and organizations to actually post and show. We didn't realize that for an event to show up under a particular organization's name, that organization had to have its own account. We missed that somewhere in the beginning. So we started posting events for organizations because we told them that we would do it for them. But then it was showing up on the library calendar and the community calendar as a library event. So we thought, what's going on here? And Courtney can probably attest to a number of emails she got from us. But once we figured out that each organization had to have its own account, we thought, well, we'll try to make things easier. And so in making our contacts to the organizations, we asked them for the information that was needed to fill out the account request. And we're talking 3 to 4 pieces of information, you know, name, address, and one other I can't remember. But we would input that, and then we would ask them, well, do you want us to post the events? And if they did, we'd put in our email address. If they wanted to post their own events, then we'd get an email address from them to put into the account application, so to speak. And then they would get a note from LocalHop several days later prompting them to create a password. And then they could control their account. And instead, so to me, it was much easier to do it that way than to tell them what page to go to on the internet to fill out, to create their account. It was just easier for us to create the account form right there once they said, sure, we'd love to participate. And in that way, all the organizations in the drop-down menu now have their own account. And, you know, we've got our library calendar, and then we have the community calendar that has everybody's events plus the library events. And so it was just a little glitch that I wouldn't want somebody else to have to go through and figure out what was going on, but we got it solved with Courtney's help.
Always here to help. So here's kind of what your community calendar looks like now. These are all the organizations that you've included. I think you guys can see my mouse, but all these organizations. And to add more, all they have to do is hit the edit button and then type in whichever organization. So as new organizations sign up, or if you want to remove an organization, or, you know, however you guys need to edit it, it's simple as that, going into the system and hitting the edit button.
Yeah, creating an account is really easy. Very, very easy to do.
And beyond that, was there any other training or support offered? And be honest with us, was it any good?
Yeah. But yes, I mean, LocalHop provided the initial training that it showed us how to set up the calendar and add organizations and add events. And then with various issues that arose, they were always available. Courtney was a great help. She was always responsive to our needs. For example, we had one specific issue concerning the number of organizations that could be added to the calendar and show up on the drop-down menu. We were adding organizations and we were glad to be adding so many, but then all of a sudden one day the calendar kind of disappeared. And so we called Courtney and said, "Whoa, what's going on?" Well, as it turns out, the system couldn't handle over a certain number of organizations. And at first we thought, well, it might be a bit of a delay in getting the issue addressed. But very soon after, Courtney called and said, "Nope, we found a fix. All the organizations are appearing," and we were back on track, and that was very satisfying. There was one other issue that we had been wanting to have resolved. And if can you go back to slide 13, Courtney?
I think. Oops. Hold on.
Sure.
13.
Yeah, that's the one. So on the right-hand side where you see the drop-down menu that lists all the organizations, if that list begins to get very much length, then it can be frustrating trying to find the organization that you're wondering about. And so we've put a request into LocalHop to make that list alphabetical so it'd be a little easier to search. And it's my understanding that LocalHop is going to be addressing that issue in the near future. And I think that'll be a great improvement to the organizational list and be very helpful. So no, it's been great working with you guys, and I just wish COVID hadn't come along and put a wrench in all our work.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we had another question come in. So in what format was the event information supplied to the LocalHop system? Courtney, you can help me with this one, but I think I can take it. So we actually, as Mimi said, when folks were granted access and accounts created, you actually log into the website, the LocalHop website, and you'll be taken to an event creation page, and then you can load information directly into that page. Courtney, do we have an example? I'm not sure if we do in the...
I don't think we have one in the PowerPoint. But if you stop by our booth, or, feel free to reach out and we can show you guys what that looks like.
So if you've done something though with like Eventbrite or one of the other online like ticketing systems, it's similar to that. So you load the event information in there. We collect data on, location, time, date, an event description. Is there a link for more information? Those kind of things. And you save the event and it immediately populates and shows up on the community calendar.
What I really like about the event, for the event creation page, is that in addition to what Matt said, you can upload a JPEG and so that you've got a graphic that goes with the event. And it's just very appealing to the eye when you click on, if you remember the MSU, the drilling down to the MSU event. When you can put a graphic there, it just draws you in, and I think it really makes the event look quite appealing.
And then another question, did you do any research on other companies to do this work? And Mimi, I'm not sure if that's more for you or maybe more for Sonia around, in the intro mentioned that Sonia had reached out to us as LocalHop to try building out the community calendar in partnership with the folks that support the cloud system. So Sonia, are you out there still? Is that something you want to address? I don't know if Sonia's still on.
From our part, the timing was just about perfect with respect to the LocalHop community calendar. We knew we wanted to do a community calendar given what people had said, but we hadn't really gotten started even trying to look into that. But then LocalHop, the LocalHop opportunity came along, so the timing, was very good. We would have had to do research, but we didn't get to that point.
Thank you. Courtney, back to you.
Cool. Let me find my place here. I think that was the last of the questions. This is the example on our website. If you guys needed to look at any support articles, we have, we're always putting out new support. This is actually a screenshot of our new website. So this is what you guys will be seeing in a few weeks, or probably a few days actually. But we have a support center, different articles constantly being updated. We're also doing new videos, screen recordings, stuff like that. So putting those on YouTube so you guys can see kind of if you have any questions, if you get stuck somewhere, looking back at that. And again, as Mimi mentioned, we're very accessible. Feel free to reach out at any time if you have questions or you don't understand something. So.
And we had another question come in. Is it possible to print a monthly calendar for those without internet access? So Mimi, is there any situation where somebody would come in and actually look for a print calendar?
We have not had that yet, but again, we were only up and running for about 2.5 months before COVID. So we stuck with electronic.
Okay, and Tammy, our system, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've got the ability to print from the website to a formatted calendar yet for users, but actually I'm gonna take that down as a good future enhancement that we'll put on our list.
Yeah, definitely.
Other questions before we go to the next section? All right, so just a couple wrapping slides then. Courtney, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So just a couple quick plugs from us here at the end. So quick and dirty community calendars, the individual website calendars for libraries. We, as crazy as this sounds, launched our public-facing room reservation service in the middle of the pandemic. So we're really excited for the virus to go past all of us for 1,000 different reasons, but one of them being that we're excited to get the room reservation system going. Registration and ticketing, whether it's free or paid events, we've got that. And then something that we're starting to roll out a little bit more is the custom website design. So it's really building websites that are fully integrated with LocalHop. So a little bit more full-fledged over what you get through the cloud system. So if anybody's interested with that, we actually did one for Oakland County and are looking to do more. So, and then the ILS integrations as well. So all of those are available as part of the suite, and we natively try to get those to work with any website that you may have. Go ahead to the next one. And just I won't go through each item into here, but really we started this about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago now, just frustrated with some of the software that's out there. Heard a lot of feedback from libraries around broken support, sites that weren't stable or weren't secure. And we've cut our teeth doing a lot of work for the federal government over the years. And LocalHop is kind of an offshoot of some of that. So excited to take on these challenges and really build something that tries to bring the libraries and the community together more so. So hopefully that helps, and we'll continue to take feedback and build on what we've done so far. So thank you for the opportunity, and especially Sonia. for setting this up initially as a pilot, and Mimi is one of the lead libraries working with this. You guys have been great and a lot of fun so far. So this slide here is just some contact information. This is part of the slide deck, so I believe they'll be sharing these afterwards. So Mimi's information, as well as me, Courtney, or our general help email. If you've got questions, you can hit us up that way, or we've also got a booth here, and they can give you either the scoop from the library side or our side. So, and I think that's our last slide. So if there's other questions, feel free, you could speak up or load them into the chat, and we'll gladly take anything that you may have. Thanks for the questions so far too, I appreciate it. All right, I'm not seeing any others come in. We can hang out for a minute or two. So thank you for attending. And again, I hope the conference is good for you. I'm sorry we're not seeing you all in Kalamazoo. It would have been a lot of fun, and hopefully next year. So, but we'll hang out for a few more minutes if anything else comes up. All right. I think that's a wrap. I see folks are leaving. So Sherry, thank you for hosting us and helping with the setup. So much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And Mimi, thank you for indulging in this crazy idea.
Oh, no, it's been fun.
Definitely helpful. So.
Okay, good.
All right. Bye.
See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you guys.